Councillor Oates and Councillor Beil. All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Now I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn the public hearing. Councillor Oates, Councillor Beil. All those in favour? Opposed? That is also carried. Thank you very much. So, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 19th regular meeting of Council. First is up is the adoption of the minutes, and the minutes are the Council meeting of December 15th, 2014. Do I have a mover and seconder for those minutes? Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Salter. Any errors, omissions regarding these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favour of adopting the minutes? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any item they want to add to the agenda, or is there any comments on tonight's agenda in terms of its contents? Seeing none, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Councillor Salter, Councillor Greer is the seconder. All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, we have 3 delegations this evening. And I want to remind the delegations you have 10 minutes, no more, no less. And the first delegation is the Communities to Protect Our Coasts, invitation to an alternative energy fair, and I believe we have Luella Hollington. Welcome, good evening, and turn the button on, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. My name is Luella Hollington, and I'm here on behalf of CPOC. And
you can sit down if you like.
Actually, I'd be
okay.
Standing. Thank you. CPOC stands for Communities to Protect Our Coast. Our group has been active in the Oceanside area, raising awareness on social, economic, and environmental consequences of our continued dependence on fossil fuels. You may have seen us at past functions. We're all wearing green shirts, and some of the members are with me here tonight. We are announcing tonight to you and to the citizens of Parksville that this spring, CPOC is hosting a fair right here in Oceanside. It will be an alternate energy fair. We are inviting many exhibitors and speakers, most of who have their businesses right here on the island. Highlighted will be businesses that provide energy solutions that do not rely on fossil fuels. Also invited are vendors displaying the latest models of low or no emission vehicles and experts in solar, wind, and geothermal and biomass power. Also present will be local food producers who showcase the best practices in food production. Our aim is to prove that we can flourish in a green economy. We believe there is a growing consensus for reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and reducing our carbon footprint. All evidence points to an environmental and economic crisis if decisive action is not taken quickly. Leadership from senior governments is slow in coming, but citizens, local governments, and businesses can take steps now. Due to our technological advances, the cost of producing, storing, and conserving alternative energy has dropped to the point that there are attractive options to the average family. And we also believe that communities who embrace clean energy can look forward to an economy that generates sustainable employment for its citizens, particularly the young people who presently have to leave our province to seek jobs in the oil industry. This fair will take place at the Qualicum Civic Centre on Sunday, 26th of April. It will be an all-day event, and admission will be by donation. We are also approaching the Council in Qualicum and the RDN and both our Chambers of Commerce. And we also have had talks with other interested groups like the PK News and Mid-Island Co-op. They're very interested in participating. Tonight we seek the endorsement of this council. We also invite you to be part of the fair with your own booth, promoting the steps Parksville has taken towards alternative energy and what plans you have for the future. We also ask that our fair be published in your town's website and included in any other communication vehicle that would be appropriate. And we look forward to seeing you all at our fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I had the good fortune to hear your presentation by Sherry last week at the RDN.
Right.
Very well done. I'm glad you came. Members of council, any questions for the delegation? Seeing no questions, later. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a question? You can certainly make a comment. Yes. Question?
I hesitated because it wasn't actually a question. It was more of a comment. I'd just like to share in case councillors and audience hadn't heard this, but on CBC News in early December, it was announced that that the employment in the clean energy sector had risen to the point that the number of people employed in BC, in Canada, is greater than the number of people employed in the oil sands. So it really is a growing economy, and nice to hear that.
Thank you for that comment.
And the cost of solar, of course, is going down and down and down.
That's right.
And the cost of electricity is going up and up and up. So that's something to consider. Thank you very much. And I think later on in the meeting, one of the members of council will have unfortunately, it'll be at the end of the meeting under new business, we'll have make a motion based on your request.
That would be great. And you might want to think if you would like to have a contact for our group, somebody at City Hall that we could contact also, like a contact person. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Is Ms. Sujata Connors. Sujata, have I got your title right? The Executive Director of the Oceanside Health Centre? Is that correct? Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to demote you. Welcome, and can you get yourself set up there, or do you need some assistance? Okay. And I want to thank you once again on behalf of Council for taking us on a tour of the Oceanside Health Centre about a week ago. Very much appreciated.
Your Worship and Councilmen, just going to open up. There we go. So thank you very much. This is really a time to share a little bit about what Island Health is doing in terms of supporting the health and wellness of the population of Oceanside. You might recognize this building as just up the street on Port Alberni Highway. The Oceanside Health Centre Health Services Program is really all about looking at doing things a little bit differently in healthcare. It's about looking at really integrating services so they speak to each other. Healthcare has a history of working a little bit in silo. So you have your home care services, your mental health services, your community services, your primary care, all working in silo doing great work. Then you see a little bit of duplication every now and again. And you see a little bit of where the clients in our community are seeing multiple people coming into their home at different times. And you're wondering, I've already asked this question a few times. I've already asked this question 10 times. Does anybody really know what's going on with me? Does anybody really listening to me? So the Oceanside Health Services Program is about doing things a little differently. So we start with what our program is about. It's about the population health and wellness for all of Oceanside. And it's looking at the client and family and their informal support, so their friend, their neighbor that's helping them and supporting their care. It's about really looking at making sure that they have really good access to primary care. And when you think about primary care, you're thinking about their primary care physician, or in the Oceanside Health Centre example is also maybe a nurse practitioner. We're looking at making sure that any services that are happening that are outside of primary care, their health care in hospital, in the community services, the NGOs, the complex care facilities or specialty care are all hardwired into the communication about what's going on. So everyone's on the same page and everyone's supporting the client with their goals and not their own goals. If we look at Oceanside also, we're looking at doing things even more differently in terms of relationship. These are operating principles by which we run, and what it means by relationship, it's an acronym that we stole from Alaska. Our primary care and our program is all based on a relationship model. So we have a really, really good relationship with our clients, everybody in the community that we're supporting, and we have a client relationship with each other. So we're supporting people to get the care where it makes sense to get that care, to make sure the client's goals are what we're providing support to. It's to make sure that we're max packing services. So what that means is when you come in for service, you're getting what you need, all of what you need, and not just coming in for one problem, making an appointment to get another problem dealt with, and on it goes. It's really about supporting the client however it makes sense for them. And the way we do that is to have a really good relationship so we know what's going on for them and what their needs are. When we came into Oceanside, when I came in about a year and a half ago, I came into a community that had a seniors health program, an end-of-life program, an integrated health network, a mental health, a home and community, diabetes, all the services that you all know about in the community. And they were all working really well, but they're all working in silos. So they could be a little bit better and they could be more integrated. We have our valuable for-profit services for Granny Go-Go, We Care, Community Pharmacy, and our not-for-profit, so complex care, hospice, Society of Organized Services. I think they're all familiar to you. And what we did is we looked at how can we take all those circles, so all those services, and bring them into one big team. So we took all those services and now we have the integrated community care team, and they know how to talk to each other, learn from each other. They're coordinating care for the clients that we support. We also have the urgent care and support clinic, and we have everybody's talking to each other and supporting the clients. We also took community pharmacy and added it in here as a little bit of a bubble to link it to family and client. And the reason we did that is because although there are for-profit services in the community, they really should be hardwired very closely to the primary care services and to support the client and family and all the care that they need. So with the biggest thing to learn about the Oceanside Health Centre and the Oceanside Health Services overall in the community is really a new way of looking at each other, working with each other to support our clients and families, and first and foremost to really just be looking at our clients and saying, what is the care you need and how can we support you and how can we make sure that that happens so that we're not duplicating services and you're just getting everything you need with in the time that makes sense for you and where it makes sense for you. I think that's all I had to share today. I do have another slide that I have available, and that was about the relationship model. And I have a couple of copies here today as well. And this is up in our health center, and what it is, it's really about our Oceanside. So the relationship we have with clients and families, the emphasis is on wellness, and it's not just on reacting but being a little bit more proactive, locations that make sense, the access is so that our wait times are limited. We're working together with the client is truly part of the circle of care. They're actually leading how we're doing care. We're integrating all our services. We're not doing any non-value added or duplication, and we're having it client-friendly, we're having it culturally sensitive, and we're improving the population health overall through the individual health of each of our clients that comes through our doors. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, everybody's sticking with the time limit tonight. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just looking at the operating principles, and I've had an opportunity to work with people in mental health and addictions, and it is very difficult to access services through the health center, and it hasn't been user-friendly. And so is this going to change that, the way you've changed it?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We're working all the time to refine our processes. You may have seen recently or heard on the news about our mental health walk-in service. So we also wanted to be very responsive to the community for any walk-in service they may need that's a little bit more than what they are receiving in their primary care. So any feelings of anxiety, depression, anything that you think of, they can come in between 10 and 3, and that's for all ages. So it's all ages, from child to adult to senior, and we support them through linking them to wherever makes sense for them. And it might be that they want to be linked in with somebody ongoing, long-term, or it might just mean that they want to keep coming back and coming into that walk-in service. So really working really closely with Ministry of Child and Family Development on that.
Okay, so one of my concerns is I've been involved with the homelessness task force, and the people who are difficult to house normally have or usually have mental illness or addictions or do a diagnosis. And one of the things in Nanaimo and other bigger city centers is they have ACT teams that are 24/7 outreach. One of the things we don't have in the Oceanside area is a 24/7 outreach. And unfortunately, while I think it's really good that we have the 10 to 3 for walk-in, a lot of times the crisis doesn't happen between 10 and 3.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
We absolutely need, and I'm speaking for the homelessness task force, I'm speaking for people who have been marginalized, that we do need that service. And we will be going once again to the UBCM and speaking to the different ministers about that.
So thank you for that. It's also a concern that I have. We're looking really closely at what we can do in linking with the Nanaimo team. So they have a resource that is accessible to the clients. We're also looking at what we can do about this homelessness population and linking them to primary care services. Many of them, most of them, are poorly linked, if at all, linked to primary care. We're looking at working very closely with the homelessness task force that's being supported through the SOS Society. We're linked in very closely there and doing things all the time. So it's a concern for you. It's a concern for me as well.
Any other members of council have questions for Ms. Connors? Well, thank you very much, Sujata. You and I have spoken earlier a few weeks ago about this whole issue of health, and I like the emphasis on healthy living and staying healthy. I think that becomes very, very important as a focus. One of the things that's concerned me is the volume. And I know that your parking lot is full at 8:30 every morning, and it's filled up almost until the end of the day. How are you coping with the volume? I know that it's still a bit of an issue, but that doesn't seem to be going away. Volume seems to be the preeminent aspect of the Oceanside Health Centre in terms of the service.
And are you talking about the volumes for urgent care, or, for example, or primary care, anything specific, any specific services?
Both.
We're working all the time with refining our services in urgent care. We have metrics that we look at, and we're doing really well to get closer and closer to achieving those metrics. They're nationally set. We also look at primary care. In primary care, we now have quite a large group of patients in primary care. We're expanding all the time, and we're impaneling people all the time into primary care. And the primary care team consists of the nurse practitioners and the physicians. With the community team, we're also continuing to get lots of referrals. But with the community team, with the breaking down of the silos, having people work better together, we're getting better and better at being more responsive to the increasing volumes that we're seeing.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk again. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Our third delegation is the Wilderness Committe, presentation by Mrs. Ronda Murdock. Welcome, Ronda. Make yourself at home.
Thank you, Your Worship. honourable councillors and staff, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. And my name is Ronda Murdock. I live at 215 Chestnut Street in Parksville. I have lived in Parksville for 33 years, and along with my partner Gary Murdock, operate a nature and sightseeing tour company based in Parksville. And I too would like to acknowledge the privilege of this meeting being held within the overlapping border of the Nanaimo and Qualicum First Nations traditional territory. I am here tonight on behalf of the Mid-Island chapter of the Wilderness Committe, of whom our chair is Annette Tanner of Qualicum Beach. The Wilderness Committe, founded in 1980, are proudly celebrating their 35th anniversary this year. We are the largest membership-based, citizen-funded wilderness preservation organization in Canada. The Wilderness Committe research, publishes, and distributes information about threatened wilderness and threatened wildlife. Underlying our work is a belief that we have the duty, the ability, and the right to stand up for the public interest by working to conserve and protect biodiversity on which all lives depend. We have been blessed with natural ecosystems that have supported humans with abundance and a sustainable economy for over 10,000 years for free. The scientific community refers to healthy, functioning natural systems as ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are goods and services humans and other living organisms receive from intact, functioning watersheds. Watersheds contain healthy, functioning forests, wetlands, rivers, streams, estuaries, and shorelines that remain healthy and functioning, but only if they have not been degraded due to landscape alterations from various unsustainable human economic development. Now, in less than 200 years, we find ourselves in the position of having to pay millions of dollars for an artificial aquifer and water treatment plant, services that were once received at little or no cost. These natural ecosystems that we depend on to sustain us may be outside Parksville's jurisdiction, but they hold huge importance for what occurs within Parksville's boundary. In a December 2014 publication of the Victoria Times Colonist, the Parksville Qualicum Beach and Tourism Association uses a patch of old-growth coastal Douglas fir forest, I'm sure you recognize it, what we all call Cathedral Grove, Macmillan Park, to generate economic benefit to Parksville and area. Cathedral Grove, Macmillan Park is an asset outside Parksville's jurisdiction that has generated wealth for the community to this very day in many different ways. This economic benefit would not have been possible without the foresight of many citizens going back as far as 1901 with Dr. James Fletcher, entomologist and biologist, who stood up and spoke out for the preservation of Cathedral Grove. It took that and generations of volunteer environmental stewards, but it also took the political will of Premier Hart and his government and the cooperation of a reasonable corporate citizen, H.R. Macmillan. But now, too soon, this coastal Douglas fir ecosystem is gone. The naturally functioning, mature coastal Douglas fir ecosystem in which we live is now a rare and endangered ecosystem with only 1% remaining. The CDF is almost extinct, and yet none of the remaining 1% is protected. I worry for Cathedral Grove's future, considering we do not even have a buffer zone between the corporate industrial forest land and the edge of the park. I worry for Cathedral Grove's integrity because steep slopes around the park are logged, in some instances right up to the edge of the park. And there are other areas, such as McLaughlin Ridge, that a decade ago, government scientists identified as critical habitat for ungulates, saying it should be protected from logging because so little undisturbed habitat is left. This park may not be in your jurisdiction, but we do receive economic benefit from it because it still stands. And that is why I urge you to have the prudence to stand up, if not as our mayor or councillor, at least as an individual, to protect anything that threatens this park or any of the remaining 1% of mature coastal Douglas fir forest ecosystem. But it is not just Cathedral Grove that is an issue. Much of the Englishman River watershed that supplies us with water and essential to life is outside the borders of our city, but it must not be out of our ability to influence what happens within it. You may have to lobby the provincial government to understand that our community watersheds, in order to provide ecosystem services in a sustainable manner, especially as we face impacts from our changing climate, cannot be done without more community input and control. Negative impacts from outside Parksville's jurisdiction can create adverse consequences to our ecosystem goods and services. Ecosystem services are our irreplaceable assets. We and you have a responsibility to protect them. Since the foresight of those early days, today some try to fool us into believing we can't stop growth, with an aim to convince us to continue to drain more wetlands, to increase demand on a finite water supply, to degrade remaining natural landscapes, to continue to build more roads and infrastructure at public expense, to exploit any resource, some of which remained untouched until recently. The seaweed beach rack harvest from deep bay shorelines is an example of that. This is all done in the name of a few jobs, but unwittingly without taking into account that many of these human activities possess the ability to harm public assets such as waterways, aquifers, aquifer recharge areas, shorelines, and many other important public values. We could really use some new foresight from elected officials that takes into account current knowledge about carrying capacity, that takes into account climate change impacts, and what we must be doing right now to be able to adapt to those changes. And I just want to mention, just received from our insurance adjuster today, the increase in insurance damage from extreme weather between 2006 and 2012 is increased by 650% because of changing climate. We need new foresight to acknowledge nature's limits to absorb an ever-increasing amount of human-produced waste and toxic pollutants, as well as take into consideration taxpayers' limitations to constantly be funding remediation and restoration. Please do not take the easy way out by saying it's not your jurisdiction. Human activities outside your jurisdiction could have expensive and catastrophic consequences for Parksville. There is enormous public support for making environmentally friendly decisions that sustain the livability of Parksville for all time. Protecting the environment protects the economy. It is what is in everyone's best interest. And now, the Mid-Island chapter would like to present each of you with a wilderness calendar that we trust will help keep your mind on the most important of responsibilities, the basics, the very basics, our ecosystem services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Rhonda, I wanted to tell you, listening to your very thoughtful and very encompassing speech, that I got a very sad email last week, and I believe I sent it on to councillors, and it was the latest reported species at risk. And it's very, very concerning to all of us. And I want you to know that our lands within the city, for sure, such as the wetlands that we have up here off of Wren's Road, and our agricultural lands, I can firmly say that they will be protected, and they'll be cherished for what they are and for what they can do for us as a community. So on that note, any questions for Mrs. Murdock? Leanne, Councillor Salter, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question. Just thank you for bringing that to council today, Rhonda. I absolutely agree with you. And we actually have chatted about Cathedral Grove. It is an issue, and I think we all recognize that. And hopefully we can work together to keep what's left. And the same with Englishman River. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks a lot for your presentation, Rhonda. One of the things from your speech, for me, it just makes me more thoughtful. And, you know, it feels like we're being pushed from all sides, and we need to change. And I think that we have been slow, and I don't know how to speed it up. So, like, when you bring it up, it's like, oh yeah, and there's that. Oh yeah, and there's that, right? And so I want to thank you again for bringing it up because it makes me stop and think again.
Thank you. That's why I do this.
Any further questions? Rhonda, could we ask you to give us a copy of your speech?
Okay.
We'd appreciate that. We're going into a strategic planning session, and I think that's going to be part and parcel of it.
So send it to you in an email?
And I can assure you that I found out in 2013 that insurance costs were going up and up. We got a 60% increase in 1 year for the condo that I'm in. It was just, and we were talking about it earlier this evening before council. This seems to be the Insurance Bureau of Canada thinks that this is here to stay, unfortunately, and it's because of climate change. So thank you once again.
Thank you. And I just do want to mention, I don't mean any disrespect. I do have some back pain issues right now, so it's if I leave early, it's I'm sorry.
No problem. Thanks for coming. Okay, members of council, we will move on to the agenda, and we have two pieces of correspondence this evening. We have correspondence from the Vancouver Island North Film Commission, request for financial support. I'll read the recommendation before asking for a mover and a seconder. The first part of the recommendation is the correspondence from the Vancouver Island North Film Commission dated December the 8th, 2014 regarding a request for financial support be received. And the second, at consideration of the Vancouver Island Film Commission request for financial support in the amount of $2,500 be deferred to budget deliberations. I'd like to combine those two. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any comments, questions? I'll call for the recommendation. All those in favor? I'm sorry. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I did read this letter and read that this group are requesting some money for in film. Yeah. So what in film? What is in film? Is that something to do with the tourism industry, or I'm not certain what that is.
I'm going to let the CAO answer that one. They've been around for a long time.
If I may, Your Worship, I believe it's the film industry on Vancouver Island. It's
Thank you, Your Worship. I had the privilege of having two filmmakers in over the weekend who met with Carrie Powell-Davidson. They were both from Europe that were looking very much in doing a nature-type film on Vancouver Island. So we're popular. And I think that we, in time, can also see some of the benefits in that from groups like this.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the recommendation. We'll combine both of them. We have Councillor Greer. Do I have a seconder? I thought it was Councillor. I thought Councillor Salters. Well, did you move it? Okay, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Oh, okay, nice. Is it proper to allow Councillor Oates to ask his question? It doesn't affect the motion that was passed, or does it?
I don't know. Other than I'll just raise it. If it's out of order, I'll be told I'm out of order, I guess, and we'll go from there. The letter from the in-film there, they suggested, or they made the offer that they'd make a presentation to our council. That might be an opportunity to ask any questions, and if we wish to consider donating to this group, then I think we should have the opportunity to make an intelligent decision and take them up on their offer of a presentation to council, and then we can see what they're all about.
We can do that well before the budget. We can do that. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay. The second piece of correspondence comes from the Regional District of Nanaimo, the Northern Community Sewer Local Service Boundary Amendment Bylaw. And I won't bother reading that. You've all read your agenda package, so I'm simply going to ask for a mover and a seconder of these three. Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Powell. Are there any questions or concerns about these three recommendations? Councillor Oates.
If this is approved, then that's what it means is that they'll have access to hook up to the sewer system. That's in simple layman's terms.
And this is these are ongoing requests. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question. I noticed one of the pieces of property are on Bay Drive, and when they come with this type of motion, is it just to have that one piece of property? We have property which is on number 5, so if we were to put in sewers, which everybody now on Bay Road is talking about putting in sewers, because at the present time they're all on septic tanks. So would everyone have to come to the RDN and the council for every individual one?
CEO.
If I may, Your Worship, if a group of people got together and approached the RDN as a group, it would come as one for the group of properties.
Unfortunately, I guess we never knew this person was coming, because there is that conversation that most of them want to get on that sewer line, finally, I might say. But anyways, thanks.
Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is a letter from the Parksville Curling Club thanking us for the sponsorship of the 2015 Tim Hortons BC Junior Curling Championships. And the recommendation is that the letter be received for information. Do I have a mover? Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Oates. Any comments or observations? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to say that I was given the opportunity to attend the dinner the night before, as well as welcome the curlers to the city of Parksville. And before we started that, the very first game was a nail-biter. Like, it's amazing the amount of how good they are. And the competition was tense. Like, I don't watch curling because I get too tense. But I have to say that these are young men and women who participate. There's a lot of camaraderie. They might curl against each other, but they all support one another. And it is a small circle. Well, not really, because it's a circle that's a lot bigger than I thought it was. We had people there from Prince Rupert, Vernon, Victoria, Wanda Fuca, Prince George, Coquitlam, Chilliwack, Kamloops, and I'm sure that I missed some. But it was very well attended. The dinner was at the Beach Club, and that place was full. And so this is an event that happened at the end of December, which is around New Year's. It's hard for people to get out and participate. And through into the first week of January, it was full. It was electric when I was in the curling club. And I just want to say that, Councillor Greer, one of his, I think his platform was to bring in sports events for economic development. Well, I think this is the beginning of the new year, and they did a very good job. And I think we need to support them in that.
Councillor Oates.
My comment was that I happened to be flipping through the channels, and I happened to see the finals on Sportsnet when they were doing it. So it was good to see pictures of. There was a couple of pictures of the community there on that national television channel. So that was a good thing. So, and it looked like the competition was really, really good. So yeah.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to thank the Curling Club for staging this event. Our city is becoming known for many, many major sporting events, both provincial, and now we have a lot of federal events taking place. So they're all a big plus when it comes to economic diversity for the city. So anyways, I'd just like to pass my comment on as a thank you to the Curling Club, as well as any of the other organizations that are staging such events. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Powell.
And just one more thing. I did talk to the organizers of this event, and they're going to come and do a presentation to council about just how much it increased the business around the community and everything. So I think I'm looking forward to those figures.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I'm going to echo Councillor Powell. We had one of our best days in January, and that from well, it was our best day in January. It's also one of our best days from October to February. So definitely brought in economic and people out in the community as well.
Finally, I'd like to echo my thanks, too, to the Curling Club for all of the great work that they do, and it was a pleasure, as far as I'm concerned, for the city to donate some sponsorship money for the tournament, and it was no doubt. I got it firsthand. I want to thank Councillor Powell for attending on my behalf. I couldn't be there, but I know that it was a great success, and we'll talk more to the Curling Club about this, and we look forward to their coming to council to give us a more in-depth briefing. On that note, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda, reports. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding the Advisory Design Panel confirmation and membership establishment?
If I may, Your Worship, for consideration this evening is Council's re-establishment of the Advisory Design Panel. The Advisory Design Panel is a committee established by Council under the authority of the Community Charter. Typically, development project designs are referred to such panels as a routine part of the application process. Advisory design panels provide independent advice to staff and council on matters pertaining to the particulars of building and landscaping design in consideration of applicable guidelines. The ADP is typically comprised of architects, landscape architects, and other design professionals as appointed by council. This type of advisory body is a common feature of many local governments. The staff report contains analysis both with respect to retaining the advisory design panel by proceeding to advertise for new members or reconsidering the continuation of the advisory design panel.
Thank you. Everyone has read the report. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beil. Are there any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Greer, and then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have discussed over the period of the last couple of years about doing away with this design panel simply to speed up development permits. We never really did come to any conclusion, I don't think. And I'm not certainly against the advisory design panel, but we should stipulate if we're going to bring in members, they should meet when they're supposed to meet, because at times they haven't had a quorum and it puts off the delay of development permits for some time. And I think it's like 4 weeks as it is, and if they miss a meeting, then it goes on for another month. So I think if we're going to go in that direction, we should stipulate the responsibility these people have is that when there's a meeting called that they have to be there. Otherwise, it really delays the development permits. Thanks.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Question through the CEO to the planner. Through the mayor, sorry. It's been a while. How many current candidates or how many people are still on that design?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, that there are none because the term of office of their position ended with the new council establishment. So it has to be reestablished. So
there wasn't any turnover? Like, did they do a 1-year term or a 2-year term?
The terms of reference are based on a 2-year term. The current and old terms of reference ended at the term of council.
Okay. So we're operating without a design panel at this point in time.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, we are operating at this very moment without an advisory design panel. I will highlight the keyword is advisory, so it is not a requirement. They provide advice, in my opinion, good advice, but we can operate with or without one regardless.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? I'll make a final comment. I particularly like item number 4 to that staff develop a policy for consideration that guides the scope and scale of projects, because I think that this is one other way, and reflecting on Councillor Greer's comments about speed, this could speed, hopefully this would speed things up if at all possible. But I congratulate staff on looking at that. I think that's important. Seeing no further comments, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for these. Pardon me? I've done it. I'm sorry. All those in favor? Too much discussion. Opposed? Thank you, that's carried. I'll get used to it. I keep forgetting. I'll have to write it down. Mr. Russell, once again, consideration of the issuance of a development permit, Seaside Village Strata at Craig Bay Estates. Would you please give us a briefing?
If I may, Your Worship, we have an application for removal of hazard trees as well as to allow for annual pruning. We have a scenario where we have a number of alder trees in a riparian area that are nearing their end of life. These are fast-growing species, and because of the residential development that's been there for a number of years, the trees have a habit of sort of leaning towards the light, and that turns them into basically a long-term hazard situation. So every year, hazard trees present themselves over the typical 20 to 30 year of the alder tree species. So a professional biologist, a qualified environmental professional, has done an assessment report, prepared a vegetation maintenance plan that addresses the hazard conditions of the trees on the site and establishes a number of parameters for replanting and revegetation that over the long term will turn it from basically having alder trees to having more solid coniferous and deciduous trees in that area. There's also part of the requirements are to remove invasive species and to do a number of replantings. The report's quite comprehensive, and in staff's opinion, it has met the requirements of the provincial riparian area regulations and the applicable development permit guidelines.
Thank you. Just before I call for a mover and a seconder, I can't help but thinking of the presentation we just had from Mrs. Murdock, and when I was reading the report over the weekend, I see here that there's a lot of effort made in taking into consideration replacing the trees and being very, very conscious of the fish habitat. So it's I think that's a good example of our commitment to the comments that Mrs. Murdock has made earlier. Okay, I would like a mover and a seconder for these motions. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Oates. Are there any questions? I know I have a mover and a seconder, so I'll ask for questions, and I promise I won't ask for a mover and a seconder again. Councillor Oates.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I read over this I think it was the biggest part of our agenda package here, and I'm not sure if there's anybody can answer this question tonight, but on page 12 of 21 of the package, where they did a wind throw assessment, on page 12 of 21 of that package, Blaine. There talks here on the bottom of page 11, he says that given that a wind throw assessment has not been completed, they should considering hiring a wind throw expert, blah, blah, blah. And then in the very next paragraph says that by signing below, I'm indicating that based on the above rationale is my professional opinion that this site does not warrant a wind throw assessment. So why does one paragraph contradict the other, if you can answer that?
Well, I certainly can't. Can you, Director of Community Planning, Mr. Russell? It's at the top of page 12 on the right-hand side. But, the confusion starts at the last paragraph on top of page 12.
If I may, Your Worship, I think it may just be a mistype, because the beginning paragraph is that given that only alder tree removal is proposed and one large maple tree, that most of the alder and young roots be left in place undisturbed. And basically goes down a little further, say removal is not expected to substantially increase the risk of wind throw on the remaining trees within the SPIA. So I think what he's trying to say is these trees that are in the need of being removed cause a wind throw effect, but the remaining trees are not expected to cause a wind throw effect. That's my take. I do know that they did have, on paragraph on the danger trees in item 1, it did have Graham Kerr, our arborist from Tree Works, do a tree hazard assessment on the property.
Councillor Oates?
No, thank you for that, and hopefully that is the explanation. I know it seems to be quite a bit of homework someone has done to have this project go ahead, and I know that they're even going to use vegetable-based chain oil in the chainsaws, so there seems to be an awful lot of precautions that are being taken with respect to the environment. So that's why I just raised that one, given that it seems to stand out as being an anomaly from how good the rest of it is. Thanks.
Any further questions from members of council? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay. I have a note here to pause every now and then for the camera, so I'm pausing a little bit here. I'll get used to it. The next item is item number C. So I'm going to ask the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Manson, to give us the background on this issue, which is going to be in all the newspapers tomorrow.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report outlines an offer to purchase agreement between the City and Wildflower Marijuana Inc. for approximately 14.5 acres of ERWS land, Aerosmith Water Service lands, that are surplus to the City and ERWS needs. The sale price is $800, or the main points of the agreement are a sale price of $870,000, which is almost exactly what or the proportionate share of what we originally purchased it for. The purchaser will pay all legal fees, all subdivision fees, subject only to us frustrating the sale. Upon completion of the purchase, the purchaser will pay all of off-site servicing costs, road construction for 2 pieces of road on the whole property, not just the portion that they are purchasing, the whole property. The agreement also includes a $20,000 non-refundable deposit. That's subject only to, again, the City frustrating the sale. The sale is conditional on Wildflower obtaining a Health Canada license for the production of medical marijuana. Regardless of whether they get that license or not, the City does get to retain the $20,000 deposit. If the proposal goes ahead, it will, I'm advised that it will employ in between 50 and 70 jobs. The improvements over and above the land value would be approximately $15 million, which could conceivably result in tax revenues to the City of about $105,000 a year.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Beil, seconded by Councillor Powell. Are there any questions on the recommendation? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We are now under the phase called new business, and I think what I'll simply do tonight is go around the table from my left to my right and approach councillors with new business. Councillor Oates, any new business? No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, you can't. Was it on tonight's agenda? You could come to the office tomorrow. I'm sorry, I can't let you bring that up tonight. No. No, you're out of order. I'm sorry. Come to the office tomorrow. It's over. Yeah, the public hearing is over. Yeah. I'll look into that. Okay. Can we do that then? Now? Let me get a ruling on that.
Absolutely, Your Worship. We will look into it.
Would you leave a copy of the letter with them? Oh, okay. Bring it in tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bring us a copy of the letter tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you. Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a motion, and the motion is that the City of Parksville host an open house type event prior to April 15th, 2015 to provide the public an opportunity to be updated on the water treatment plant and to ask questions.
Go ahead, I didn't see you.
Sorry, I'd like to actually amend that motion. The community had actually requested a town hall meeting, and so I'd like to amend from open house to town hall, and that will give the community an opportunity to speak to questions, to hear questions that are asked, and to maybe understand better than they would in an open house, which is really just people going through an open house on their own. As a group. So I would be amending that to request a town hall. Thank you.
Is there a difference between a town hall meeting and an open house?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
There's a motion on the floor. There's already
I know. Shh, quiet. Okay. You've made there's a motion on the floor. Councillor Oates, would you like to change your motion to a town hall meeting? A friendly amendment? Okay. So you'll second that?
I second that, yeah.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. Councillor Oates.
No, I think that this is one of the biggest capital projects that the City of Parksville is going to embark on in anybody's memory, and probably for the immediate future. So I think it's important that we give the public as many opportunities as we can to come and make presentations to council and come before council and make us aware of any concerns that they may or may not have, so that when we finally come before the public with the borrowing referendum, that the most people have the most information to make the right decision at that time. So I would ask for council's support on this motion.
The other comment I'd like to make is there's a lot of this is on the website, so if in passing this motion, which I'm sure is going to receive unanimous consent, in anticipation and preparation for that, it might be well and useful to go over the website and determine what the questions the specific questions might be to fully understand or get clear what people don't understand. So thank you for that. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimously carried. Thank you. Any other new business, Ms. Councillor Oates? Okay. Councillor Beil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a couple of items I'd like to bring forth. I would like to move that Parksville Council take part in the alternate energy fair, taking part in the, I guess, what was it? What was it now exactly? The roundhouse, sort of? In the roundtable discussion. Yes, I'd like to move that.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Directed towards Councillor Beil, would you be wanting to attend, or were you asking for staff to attend?
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Patterson. I was hoping that our mayor might like to take part in that, and perhaps
yes,
there are some other individuals.
Yes, I would. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Oh. Councillor Beil, another one. Okay.
Not all motions, so I would just like to share some information. I have recently had the pleasure of meeting with the Oceanside Community Arts Council, and they do presently have a survey that's out for the community. Community members, take note, perhaps you've already done this, but the purpose of the survey they're conducting is to provide insight about the Oceanside arts environment, to assist their board with developing a strategic plan. Now, they already have some results, so they've done a preliminary analysis, but it is very preliminary at this point in time. The survey, there is a link to the survey on the city website, so people can have a look there and go to it. And community input is certainly encouraged to help them as they gather information to help them with the strategic plan. I would also like to inform Council that I will be attending a library board meeting this coming Saturday. Main items on the agenda involve updates of what has taken place in the past year, as well as elections, as well as an orientation for new council. So there's nothing too contentious. I did think it was interesting to note when I was reviewing their financial statement for the past year that many of the items actually came in under budget, which was nice, and some things were modest and so on, but under budget, under budget, under budget, over budget, and so on. So they're obviously very, very frugal with and sticking to their plan. And I think that's all from me. Thank you.
As long as the over budget doesn't cast away all of the under budget items. Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to report on that I attended the PDBA event on Wednesday, as did many councillors. I was very happy with the turnout, and I really liked the process and how the event was set up. There was a lot of positive feedback. The people that were there from small businesses in the downtown core were keen about presenting their ideas. I think that they provided a lot of good information to go forward. And I'd also like to say it was really clear after the presentation how much work the PDBA has done since their inception. And I think we get good bang for the buck. And they're going to do this quarterly, which I'm really looking forward to, because it was really, like, I couldn't believe it. The people thought some of the ideas that came up at the tables, and to take those ideas forward and see where it goes to the next meeting. So I'm really excited about it.
Anything else, Councillor Powell? Thank you very much. And I also attended, along with, there were six out of 7 councillors there, and I'd just like to echo what Councillor Powell was saying. It was a really interesting evening, and lots of good participation, and the tables I sat at, lots of good ideas. So on that note, Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just informed today about raising money for the homeless and the hungry in our community. And the evening is February the 21st. It's a Wednesday, and it's called the coldest night of the year. And I've challenged my hockey players that I play hockey with on a weekly basis that we need 100 of them to step up with $25. So if you know any of the old guys that play hockey, maybe you can help them with their sponsorships. But anyways, I'm hoping to get 100 guys with $25 each. And I think it's going to be a great fun night, and I suggest that everyone else maybe attend and donate as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much. That sounds
I should have brought my hat.
Councillor Salter.
Yes, I would like to make a motion regarding correspondence that was received from the community with regard to CM2H Hill. I would like to make a motion that staff investigate the received information and report the specific information back to Council in order to provide due diligence on behalf of Council and the City of Parksville. And I would also like to request a recorded vote.
Is that not being done, CAO? It's being done. That's actively being done now.
Okay.
So.
And a report back to Council?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually being done as far as I know.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Well, I think I had a fairly quiet time. Your Worship, I attended a Youth Link meeting in regards to recreation and doing some joint work with different groups in the community, from the Career Center that is putting on I missed my paperwork, a session for employment, and it's about 6 weeks type period, so it's really quite interesting. That's available on the Career Center's website and put some people in touch with other people for doing some volunteer work with the Oceanside Accessibility Group and with the Parksville Museum. So that's
Thank you very much, which reminds me I've got to pick up Marg Leffler's latest book. I was approached about that. Okay, if there's no other business, I'm going to have asked for a mover and a seconder for an adjournment of this council meeting. Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Powell. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.